So Maya, at what age did you get married? And at the time, did you have any assets? And were you planning on furthering your studies?
Okay, I was 19. I just finished matric. I was 19 years old, and I met this guy that was, I thought he was like everything that I wanted. A little bit older than me, so much in love. I had no assets at the time. All I wanted to do was, we were going to get married, and we were going to set up a family home, and we were going to live happily ever after.
Now that you were married at 19, what were your plans for the future with your husband?
At the time that we got married, we were, because of our circumstances, we were then living with our in-laws. And as a young couple, that's not what you want. So that's when I went and I applied for us to have our own house, and I went to and applied at the city of Cape Town.
What was the process of acquiring your first home?
Okay, when I found out that we could apply for a house at the city, the offices were in Hout Street at the time. And we spoke, but he was working away. I remember he was working in Bloemfontein at the time. And then we agreed that I would go, because I'm at home, and I would go and I would apply. And at the time I went and I applied. We could apply because we were then a married couple, and I used his ID number and his stuff. I put his name down, and that was fine. But in my mind, it was the two of us were applying to have a home, even though he was the breadwinner.
At what point did you actually realize that you were not a co-purchaser but a dependent in terms of the house agreement?
Okay, we had been living in the house that we got from the city for about 7 years already. And things weren't all that rosy anymore. And then he actually left. He walked out and abandoned us as a family. And everything seemed to have happened all at the same time. I received some notification from the city that we had to come forward. They wanted to see us in a meeting. When we got to the city, that's when all of this hit me. Because then we had purchased the house for a certain amount, but there was a huge arrears because he had stopped paying. He just wasn't paying the way I thought he was paying.
Once you found out the house was in arrears, what did the city of Cape Town offer as alternatives?
Okay, what they offered was you had to pay a certain amount that they told you towards the arrears. I specifically remember that amount. It was an amount of 600 Rand. I was alone in that meeting. He didn't join us for the meeting. And I actually felt like I had no choice. I had all these children and I needed a home. Where were we going to stay? So I had just started working a little bit before, a few months before that. I was actually earning at the time, I'm not even shy to say, I was earning 1,000 Rand. I then had to go, but I had a good relationship with the guy that gave me a job. It was somebody that my sister knew, and she worked at the same company. So I walked over the road. I asked to see him. And I told him, I'm coming back now at the city. I said, I'll be back now. I will sign this. Please give me a chance. I walked over the road. I spoke to my boss. He gave me the 600 Rand. That's the amount they said they needed. And then I went back over and I paid it to them. So I feel that what was I supposed to do if I didn't give them that money and sign that? I wouldn't have had a place to stay. I mean, they weren't going to let me stay there and not pay anything.
So what was your way forward after signing the acknowledgement of debt and paying the installment that the city requested?
Okay. After I had signed that acknowledgement of debt at the city, I think I just then went into survival mode. I just loved to work and to see to my children and to pay what I had now signed for, because we needed a roof over our head. That's really how it was. It was tough. It wasn't easy. And I can honestly say, I never tell my children this, but if I didn't have them, I don't think I would have survived. Because, when your husband abandons you and walks away from you, the community I live in the community, that's not one of the easiest communities to live in. They look at you, people, this is the reality of the situation. People kind of like other people's distress. And because they now also see you as, oh, your husband walked away from you. You feel less of a woman already as it is, and they treat you like that. They don't want you to be around. They feel sorry for you, and in front of you, shame, but behind you, they don't really want you to be a part of any of their groups, because now, they're scared you're going after their husbands, and people, like I said, it's not an easy situation. You really feel alone. And again, if I didn't have my children, I would never have been able to have gotten through that period of my life. I eventually found the courage to go and find help to get out of this marriage. Um, it took me 7 years to actually then get a fasakh. I went looking for help first. I went the legal way. I went Islamically. And, when I went legally also to look for child support, I feel that I was really shamed there. It was something that I would never do again. And I never did again. I got along on my own after that. Islamically, it was like people didn't believe me. They didn't believe the things I was saying. I felt always like I'm the problem. And then eventually, like I said, I gave up and I just totally threw myself into just looking after my family on my own and getting along on my own. And then there was somebody, then I eventually got to somebody in our area. And my children were then going to, like for the Islamic studies there. And I think because this person got to see, he then knew us, and then he got to actually see the struggles, without me even having to say. And that was how I got the help to eventually, that led to my fasakh.
So stories like Ms. Beste's Live Reality is one of the main reasons why the Women's Legal Center actually launched the Women's Legal Center Trust versus the President of South Africa in December 2014. A lot of women like Sumaya Beste were being prejudiced, especially at the end of their marriage. The Women's Legal Center actually litigated a case in Goodwood where a husband wanted to evict his first wife and his children out of the house so that he could live with his second wife. So that's why it was very important to ask the court to make an order. So in terms of Islamic law, Muslim marriages in their nature are out of community of property. And due to this, the Constitutional Court in June 2022 ordered that women in Muslim marriages can approach any of the family courts to institute divorce proceedings. And in these divorce proceedings, women like Sumaya can request the court to make a just and equitable distribution of assets at the end of the marriage. This is just to ensure that all the women that were homemakers during the duration of the marriage, women that supported their husbands and took care of their children and did not work, are no longer in a more vulnerable position when the marriage ends.